You were born broken, not injured, not incomplete. Broken by design. Doctors call it normal. Anatomists call it strange. On the day you arrived, your body had almost 100 more pieces than it has right now. And somehow, none of them were ever lost. A newborn has around 300 bones. An adult has 206. That means somewhere between your first breath and this exact moment, close to 100 bones simply stopped existing as separate pieces. But they didn't disappear. They merged. Quietly. Without pain. Without you ever noticing it happen. Why would a body start with more parts, only to fuse most of them together later? Wouldn't it be easier to just build the final skeleton from the start? It would be easier. It would also be impossible. Think about your skull for a second. Right now, it's one solid curved shell. Hard enough to protect the most complex object in the known universe. But when you were born, your skull wasn't one piece. It was several separate plates, connected by soft, flexible gaps called fontanelles. You may have heard them called soft spots. Parents are terrified to touch them. And for good reason, they feel wrong. Soft where bone should be hard. But that softness is the entire point. A rigid, fused skull couldn't fit through a birth canal. It's simply too large, too solid, too unyielding. So evolution found a workaround. Split the skull into movable sections. Let those sections slide, overlap, compress, just enough to squeeze through. Then, once the baby is out, seal the seams shut over months and years. This isn't a flaw in the design. It's the design. The same trick happens almost everywhere else in a baby's body. Long bones, like the ones in your arms and legs, don't start as solid bone at all. They start as cartilage, softer, more flexible, more forgiving. Over time, that cartilage slowly hardens into true bone in a process called ossification. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens piece by piece, from specific points inside the bone called growth plates, expanding outward like ice, slowly spreading across a pond. This is why children can take a hard fall and walk away with barely a scratch, while the same fall might break an adult's bone entirely. Their skeleton isn't fragile. It's unfinished. And unfinished, in this case, means flexible. Have you ever wondered how forensic scientists can look at a skeleton and tell almost exactly how old that person was when they died? They use this exact process. Bones fuse in an incredibly predictable order, almost like a biological clock ticking through childhood and adolescence. Researchers William Grulich and Sarah Idell Pyle spent years studying X-rays of children's hands and wrists, cataloging exactly which bones fuse at which age. Their atlas is still used today, decades later, by doctors and anthropologists trying to determine a child's biological age just from a single-hand X-ray. A skeleton, it turns out, keeps a diary. It just writes in bone instead of ink. But bones aren't just passively growing on some fixed timeline. They're listening, constantly. In the late 1800s, a German anatomist named Julius Wolff noticed something strange while studying bone structure. Bone wasn't just solid material stacked wherever the body felt like it. It was arranged in patterns that matched, almost perfectly, the direction of the forces acting on it. Bones under heavy daily strain grew denser, thicker, reinforced exactly where the pressure was greatest. Bones under little strain stayed lighter, more minimal. This became known as Wolff's Law. Your skeleton isn't just a structure you carry around, it's a structure shaped by everything you've ever done with it. A century later, an American physician named Harold Frost took that idea even further. He proposed something called the mechanostat, the idea that your bones have their own internal feedback system, constantly sensing mechanical stress and adjusting bone density in response. Walk more, carry more, push against gravity more, and your bones respond by getting stronger. Sit still for years, and your bones respond too, just in the opposite direction. This means the skeleton in your body right now isn't the same skeleton you were born with, and it isn't a fixed, unchanging structure either. It is being rewritten, slowly, based on how you live. Doesn't that change how you think about your own body? Long before X-rays, before Wolff, before modern medicine even existed, a Scottish biologist named Darcy Wentworth Thompson was already obsessed with a similar question. Why do living things take the shapes they take? In his book On Growth and Form, Thompson argued that biological structures aren't random. They're the result of physical forces acting on living tissue over time. The same mathematical rules that shape a snail's spiral, a honeycomb's hexagon, or a bird's hollow, lightweight bone. Your skull's fontanelles, your fusing wrist bones, your densifying femur. These aren't separate biological accidents. They're all the same underlying principle, applied differently across your body. Form follows force. Now think back to that newborn skull for a moment. Those unfused plates aren't just a temporary inconvenience your body has to deal with. They're actively necessary for something else entirely, something most people never think about, your brain's growth. An infant's brain nearly doubles in size within the first year of life alone. If the skull were already fused into one rigid shell at birth, there would be nowhere for that growing brain to expand into. The soft spots aren't just a passage for exiting the birth canal, they're a temporary allowance, a kind of biological patience, giving the brain room to grow before the walls around it finally close in. Every part of this process, the extra bones, the soft fontanelles, the cartilage before bone, the predictable fusion timeline, the mechanostat quietly adjusting density based on your daily life, is solving the exact same underlying problem. How do you build a structure strong enough to protect and support a body for 80, 90, potentially over 100 years, while still leaving enough flexibility for that body to grow, adapt, heal, and change along the way? A skeleton built entirely rigid from day one would be strong, but brittle, fixed, unable to expand as the brain grows, unable to pass through a birth canal, unable to reinforce itself where daily life demands more strength. So instead, your body starts soft and hardens with purpose. It starts fragmented and unites with intention. It starts flexible and becomes strong exactly where strength is required, guided by forces you apply to it every single day, whether you realize it or not. This is happening in your body right now, even as you sit still listening to this. Bone tissue in your skeleton is being broken down and rebuilt constantly, adjusting, reinforcing, responding to the small mechanical signals of your daily movement. You are not the same skeleton you were a decade ago. You will not be the same skeleton a decade from now. You were born broken, not injured, not incomplete. Broken by design. But you were never actually broken at all. You were built to be rebuilt, one fusion at a time, one growth plate at a time, until the scattered pieces of the baby you once were became the single, adaptable skeleton quietly holding you upright, right now, as you listen to this.